to another episode of Southern Woke.
I'm Marina.
And I'm Kaylin.
And today we are continuing the spooky season. Today we've got some paranormal stories sent in from some viewers, and then later on we're going to get into the story of the Conjuring house.
Does our episode actually come out on Halloween Day?
It's Saturday. I think Halloween's Sunday.
Oh, is it Sunday? Okay, it's close enough.
I mean, still, the weekend of the YouTube video comes out on Halloween.
That's true.
So.
Alright, y'all. Well, we asked y'all to send in y'all spooky stories, and we got 2 stories for y'all today from 2 viewers. Marina's going to take it from here.
Alright, so our first story comes from Julia. And she says, "Hey Southern Woke, I have a pretty short and sweet spooky story. When I lived in Pensacola, Florida, I lived with 2 friends in a historical home which was once one of the first African-American schoolhouses in that town. It was a traditional Southern home, painted white with a wraparound porch, and the porch ceiling was painted blue to keep away the evil spirits, for it's believed that spirits cannot cross water, and blue represents water." Which is interesting, side note, because at the Myrtles, they have a lot of, decor type of things that are intentionally placed to keep the spirits away.
That is cool.
But Anyway, one day, my roommate and I smelled something like a gas leak in our home. At the time, we were not able to stay and wait because we had other errands to run, so my roommate's mom came over and waited for the gas company to show up. When we came back home, she told us that she experienced something very weird. She heard knocking from somewhere in the house. She told us she walked around the whole porch around the house looking for the person knocking, but there was nobody there. Now, this house was very old and had a lot of history. One of my roommates, her grandmother, was the original owner of the house. She was part of the historical home preservation of Pensacola. So they were the ones who would make these plaques registering them as historical homes. Her grandmother also passed away in that house, in my bedroom, about 7 years prior to us moving there. Basically, we all kind of had this sense that the house was active. We had experienced other strange things, like doors opening by themselves and whistling. So my friend's mom is explaining this knocking, and I ask her, "How many times did you hear knocking?" And she says, "It knocked 5 times. And I say, "Like this?" And I knocked 5 times. Immediately after I stopped knocking, there was a responding knock 5 times.
Nope. I'm done. Nope.
Right on the same wall I knocked on. This wall was running through the middle of the house, meaning there was no one on the other side who could have been knocking from the outside or from another bedroom. It was one of the strangest, most unexplainable things. It didn't scare us at the time. We were more baffled than anything and just responded by gasping and looking at each other. That experience was one of the most responsive I've ever had. And I messaged her back. I was like, "Girl, at first I thought maybe there was a gas leak, maybe it was the pipes knocking, but no, it knocked it back 5 times. So that eliminates that."
What if it was a super delayed vibration? What if she knocked 5 times, somehow shook through the house and then came back?
That would be a really big coincidence.
I would convince myself that it was that, over-believing that it was a ghost, just so I'd be too
coupled
scared.
with their other experiences, though.
Oh, it definitely wasn't that.
I know. Well, let's go on to the next story. By the way, thank you, Julia, for sending that one in.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
The next one comes from Kylie. Let me scroll up to the beginning. Okay, because she sent a lot. She said, "I have a few paranormal stories that happened to my dad when he was a teenager in Long Island, New York in the late 80s. Here's the first one. One night, my dad and his friends went to a graveyard to hang out and drink." Wow, sounds like a chill night. "During the very early morning, they heard something towards the forest that was next to the cemetery, and when they looked over to where the sound came from, they saw a guy around their age coming towards them. My dad and his friends said hi to the guy and asked what he was doing there in the middle of the night. You could see that something was off about this guy. He was dressed in clothes from the 70s and was carrying school books with a leather strap. The boy told my dad and his friends that he needed to get to school and asked if the bus had come yet. My dad replied that there was no school since it was the middle of the night, and he asked if the guy was okay. The boy kept saying that he needed to get to school. Then the guy walked back towards the woods and then disappeared. They were very confused about what had just happened until they looked down at the tombstone that they were near. The grave was for a boy that had died in the 1970s and was around the age of that guy. That's when they realized that they had just interacted with a ghost that had looked like a living person. Okay. That's the first story. What do we think?
There's no other explanation for that.
That's why I want to go to cemeteries more often. I feel like finally I would have something happen.
Yeah, I'm not going with you, so
Well,
Kylie, if you ever want to go sit in cemeteries with Marina, hit her up.
well, sounds like they're from New York, so I don't think that's gonna be happening.
Road trip.
Anyways, okay, let's go to her next story, which takes place again in Long Island around the same time as the last story. This time, my dad and his friends were exploring an abandoned area with several buildings. I believe my dad said that Marilyn Monroe stayed there on a vacation in the 50s when it wasn't abandoned. As they were driving down the dirt road leading up to the building, they noticed several cars on the sides of the road with license plates from different decades. That instantly just creeps me the fuck out. It seems that the cars had been left there for a long time. At this point, they were starting to get a bit spooked, but that was nothing compared to what happened to them when they got to the buildings. Once they reached the buildings, there was a lady sitting outside them. The old lady told them that they shouldn't be there and warned them to get out of there before something bad happened to them. After hearing what the lady told them, they got out of there in a hurry. He isn't sure if the lady was a ghost or what, but they didn't want to stay and find out. He did tell me that there were satanic cults in several parts of Long Island, and Long Island itself is really haunted. After all, a lot of it was built on ancient burial grounds. And then she actually suggested that we do a Long Island episode on its hauntings, and that there's a place called Lake Ronkonkoma that is haunted by a Native American princess, and every year a male fitting a certain description drowns in the lake. Interesting. Okay.
That is crazy. How have we not heard about that?
I know. There's so many little stories like that. We can only do so much, but the list of topics are endless.
Yeah.
Anyways, okay, since the last two stories were pretty short, here's another one. Okay, here's her last one. She says, my dad was living in a group home for a while in the mid-1980s that used to be a girls' boarding school many years prior. The group home was known to be very haunted. There was a part of the building that couldn't be used anymore because it was always freezing cold, even in the middle of the summer and without AC. There used to be an elevator, but it had been sealed shut, and my dad and the other people there would hear sounds coming from inside of it that sounded like pounding, banging, and I think shouting as well. He also said that they heard what sounded like the elevator running up and down the elevator shaft. But one of the most freaky events that he witnessed there was one day my dad and some of the others were in the rec room playing pool, and one of the boys was tapping the pool stick on the floor, and when he stopped, there was a tapping that mimicked the tapping from the boy coming from underneath the floor. The rec room was on the bottom floor, and the floors were concrete, so there was no way anyone was below tapping back at them. It had to be a ghost. That's pretty much it on that story. Okay. She goes on about, when I was in middle school, I used to play the Ouija board with my one sister, and they would talk to spirits all the time.
Nope.
Always had a feeling something was watching me most of the time, and would also get strong feelings that something was going to happen before it did.
Probably because you're playing with the Ouija board.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you, Kylie, for sending those stories in. They were very spooky. My favorite one was the graveyard.
Yeah, I got a real visual picture of that ghost talking of.
I know. Alright, you guys. Y'all stay tuned for next Halloween if y'all got paranormal stories, and you could hear them on the podcast.
Absolutely. Alright, y'all. So today we are talking about The Conjuring, and more specifically, the real story of The Conjuring, because we all know The Conjuring was a movie that was released in 2013. It had critical acclaim. It was a huge movie. And did you see it when it was in theaters, like the very first time?
I don't believe so.
Okay, well, I did see it in theaters, and I remember there was like a sign up that like was basically warning you not to go in the theater because it was like so scary. People were running out, and like you may get possessed watching it through the
Oh my
screen.
God.
So like they really marketed it as this super
It's
scary.
like the Zach Bagans Demon House.
Exactly. They really like made it this big scary thing, and it's a good movie. I enjoyed the Conjuring series. I'm not even gonna lie. But it actually is based off of a true story. Now, whether you believe that everything that happened in the movie actually happened, but a lot of the events are at least said to be. And the people that the events happened to are actually real people in real life, and they say that those things did happen.
Fun fact, the movie was really, really watered down based on the true events because the director originally wanted it to be PG-13, but still it came out so intense it had to be rated R. But yeah, just fun facts.
Yeah, that's actually kind of. How would you get a movie like that to be PG-13? Like, you can't have a horror movie that's PG-13. I wouldn't watch it.
Especially like, even like the real stuff that did happen. Like, I think some of the differences are, there was no actual exorcism that was performed in the house, but the movie, of course, wants to do it all up. So, and the mom, they say, wasn't actually possessed. They were just attacked really, really badly and, like, were drained of their energy, but, like, that's still pretty much possession.
Yeah. There's like some little things that are different about that, but even the actual people, like the Warrens, which are like the demonologists that did the investigation in the movie you probably saw, they even say that the only things that were really different was like the fact that there wasn't an actual exorcism that happened.
Yeah, and I think that's like solely based because Ed Warren himself wasn't like an ordained Catholic priest or something, so he couldn't do one.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Warrens real fast because they do play a part in this. So Ed Warren, he served in World War II and he was a former police officer, and he eventually became a self-professed demonologist after studying the subject on his own. Also in the movie, you know, you see Lorraine, which is his wife, who is the clairvoyant, which was able to like speak to the demons that Ed ended up discovering. In real life, not in the movie, in 1952 they founded the New England Society for Psychic Research, which is the oldest ghost hunting group in New England, and they quickly gained notoriety as respected paranormal investigators after their initial investigation of the Amityville hauntings. I'm just going to be honest with you, I don't know anything about the Amityville hauntings.
I mean, me either, just because my brain can't possibly obtain all the paranormal spooky stories out there. But I'm sure I've seen it at some point, but I couldn't tell you how it's different from anything else.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you a single thing about them either. But the reason why Ed and Lorraine are central to the story is their two most famous cases were like super popularized with the Conjuring franchise. And it was two experiences that they had with two different families which are dealing with demon possessions. And that's kind of the stories we're going to talk about today and how those actually went down.
Yup. Okay, so a little bit on the house itself. The home was built in 1736 in Harrisville, Rhode Island. I still feel like that is such a random state for this to all be happening in. Like, such a little state. But anyways, it's a, what?
Is Rhode Island not where the demon house is?
No, that was Gary, Illinois or something.
You're right, never mind. Let's move on.
Yeah! Dumbo.
Something else crazy we talked about in the podcast happened in Rhode Island.
I don't know. You dedicated listeners, you tell us. What the hell did we talk about in Rhode Island? Because I don't remember.
I'm going to think of it at some point. I'm sorry, continue.
Okay. The home is about 3,100 square feet, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, still on its original spooky foundation. It survived the Revolutionary and Civil Wars and several storms, including the hurricane of 1938 that plummeted like all of its surrounding areas, but still, the home survived. Before the Conjuring house, it was known as the Arnold Estate. A previous owner of the home once said, "It's a portal cleverly disguised as a farmhouse. That's why it's so resilient." Dun, dun, dun.
So, as with most paranormal things, there is so much stuff out on the internet and so many different conflicting stories about things that happen and you don't know what's true or not. So I tried to stick as closely to factual information as we can, but I don't know. I went down a rabbit hole of information. I'm like, there's no way any of this is true. Did you have that problem when you were researching things too?
See, my research mostly came from like watching one of the actual daughters that live there. She's done many interviews, written many books. Like, I've gotten most of my information from her, so I feel like she was there. I believe her.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take her word for it. So I feel like most of this should be true, is what I'm trying to say.
All right.
Okay, so 2 years before moving into the home, the family that we're talking about is called the Perrin family. First off, it consists of the mom and dad, Carolyn and Roger Perrin, and then they had 5 daughters. Andrea was the oldest, and then from the rest, I don't know, but it was Nancy, Christina, Cindy, and I think April was the youngest. So 2 years before they moved into the home, the Perrin family brought home a dog, and the mom, Carolyn, randomly named it Bathsheba because she wanted it to be something unique and pretty. I don't know, but like
Bathsheba?
Yes.
You like look at your poodle and you're like, that's a Bathsheba looking dog. Come on.
I know, like, that's so weird, but anyways. Little did they know that was like a precursor, some weird universal sign about the home that they were going to be moving into in the future, who is haunted by a spirit known as Bathsheba. You want to give a little story on Bathsheba?
Alright, y'all. Let's talk about Bathsheba. So, I'm going to keep like relating this back to the movie, but the main spirit that was in the movie is this person that was known as Bathsheba.
Also, I want to point out that in the movie, and also in real life, when Lorraine Warren went into the house, she first set her hand on the stove and saw Bathsheba and immediately was like, she's the malevolent spirit of the house. So therefore, like, the movie based it off of her, but like, I don't think that was the main malevolent spirit. But we'll get there, but you tell the story.
I agree. So, let's talk about who Bathsheba was as an actual like person that we know factually from history. So I found this really cool website called historyversushollywood.com where it takes like movies and like things like that and then compares with what we actually know from history. So this was pretty cool. So according to History versus Hollywood, Bathsheba Sherman, who was born Bathsheba Thayer in Rhode Island in 1812, she married a fellow Rhode Islander called Judson Sherman. She became Bathsheba Sherman. They were married up there, and she filled the role of housewife while her husband Judson worked as a farmer on their land. They were fairly well off. They had a son named Herbert L. Sherman, and now there is a lot of myths and stories, I don't know if you saw, about Bathsheba having multiple other kids who ended up all dying. Like, they say that she had like 5 kids.
I saw something about like there was a baby that died in her care.
Okay, that's a little bit different. That did happen, though.
Are you going to get to that?
I am going to get to that.
Okay, then I'll let you go.
Okay, well, there's all this controversy because for some reason there's legends saying that she had like 4 kids and they all ended up dying, but there's no records anywhere about that. They only have the record of this one child that was born, and the people that are saying that she had multiple other kids are saying that like the census somehow like skipped them or they had died before the census was counted or something, which I guess is a possibility, but there's no proof of that happening. But as far as we know from like records, we know that she only had one son. And the family also usually took in a boarder to help them out on their farm. There is no hard evidence to support that she was really a witch, because that's what all the legends and stuff say. But having lived on a neighboring farm in the 1800s, suspicion began to grow when an infant mysteriously died in her care. So she was like watching a neighboring baby and it ended up dying. And when the baby was examined, it was determined that the mortal wound was caused by a large sewing needle that had been impaled at the base of the child's skull. Now, the townspeople believed that she sacrificed the baby like to the devil, and they kept calling her a Satanist and a witch. And she actually ended up going to trial for it, but there wasn't sufficient evidence to convict her of any wrongdoing, and she was cleared legally, but the public never changed their mind about her. And that's about as far as we get of Bathsheba, as far as factual records we know for good. But according to all the legends and stuff, she was an awful person who killed a bunch of kids and now became this dark spirit that's tormenting the house.
Yeah, she don't seem very pleasant, period, though, like, regardless. And Lorraine Warren believed that Bathsheba was indeed evil and brought the sewing needle that she killed the baby with, supposedly, to the grave, and later on is used to injure someone in the family.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah. So, let me find... Okay, so let's back it up a little bit. So how did they even come across this house to begin with? So Carolyn randomly found the estate in the newspaper that she got outside of Andrea's flute lesson place. So like she just dropped her off at a flute lesson, got this newspaper, wasn't even really looking for a house, I don't think, but then she saw this estate that was like decently priced, big land, like I think they had like 200 acres, so they bought it in December of 1970. Carolyn didn't want to move in during Christmas though, so they moved in to the house in January the next year. And the previous owner, Mr. Kenny, was his name Kenny or Kenneth? Do you have that?
I don't have that.
Okay, well, we'll just call him Mr. Kenny, that's cute. He was an elderly gentleman who captured the family's hearts with his kindness and generous spirit. And the day that they moved in, there was about 20 cars helping them move in. So first of all, the fact that this is a haunted house, you're bringing 20 mother truckers up in there, you are waking shit up, I think,
Yeah.
in my brain. Anyways, Mr. Kenny pulled Roger, the dad, to the side and told him for the sake of his family, leave the lights on at night. And Roger just thought it was so that like the girls don't fall down the stairs at night because the two bathrooms were both downstairs. So like that's what he was thinking. When in reality, that's how Mr. Kenny kept the spirits at bay. And when Mr. Kenny lived there, the neighbors literally never saw his lights off. They were on all the time.
I actually read that too. That is so creepy.
So, also, in the movie, they have the family dog dying the morning after they moved in. But, interestingly enough, Andrea, who wrote these books on her experience living in the house, she didn't even put that story in the book or told the producers about it because she just thought the dog story was, like, too much. I don't know why she would think that's too much compared to everything else that happened. But I get it, it's a dog.
Yeah, I'm that way too. Like, I don't care if the people in the house are okay. This sounds absolutely awful. While I'm watching a movie, like, I don't care if the people die, but if the dog dies, I get all emotional.
That was the first thing I noticed in this movie, because, like, I watched it again when I was doing my research, and I was like, damn, the dog.
Yep.
But, okay, so in reality, they had two dogs when they moved in, Bathsheba being one of them, and then they had another big dog. And 2 weeks after they moved in, one of the dogs did die, but it wasn't Bathsheba. I just thought that was an interesting little factoroo. So, they move in, and the haunting started off pretty small. Like, things moving around, getting, like, misplaced, or, like, Carolyn would clean, and then the dust would just reappear. They would hear, like, faint bangs. And then, after a while, they would, like, start seeing apparitions, and it just kept growing and growing.
So Carolyn started getting a little skeptical about the stuff happening, and she ended up doing a little bit of research about the house, and she discovered that it had been in the same family for 8 generations. And according to her research, many of them had died under horrible and strange circumstances. Several of the children had drowned in a nearby creek, one was murdered, and a few of them hanged themselves in the house's attic. You should have to give like a report of everybody that died in the house before you can sell it. Is that our law? Because I feel like
I
it
feel
should
like
be.
in some states they have to disclose if there's a death, but maybe there's like, I don't know, I don't know if I'm just making this up, first of all. But I feel like there's also a certain rule about like only if it's the previous owner that died. Like if it's beyond that, who fucking cares, basically.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know.
Somebody
Maybe I
could
made
have died
that up.
right where we're standing for it right now.
I don't think so because I still get his mail.
Alright. Well, they ended up finding out that some crazy stuff ended up happening in that house.
Yeah. And also, they were thinking it was a pretty malevolent spirit because it would especially act up when they had people over. The youngest girl, April, made friends with a spirit in her closet who she believed was a little boy named Oliver Richardson. But it could have also been a girl named Olive Richardson, a woman that died in 1867 and whose grave is just 10 miles from the estate. Honestly, there's just so many spirits that they've seen in this house. They said, I believe it was over a dozen different spirits they saw throughout time.
Yeah, they said there were like other spirits in there besides Bathsheba all the time. And some of the spirits like actually did weird things. Like this one thing, according to Andrea, that the spirits would all smell like rotten flesh.
Ew.
And they would cause the beds to rise up off of the floor.
Oh yeah. They would literally have to like move their beds back in place every morning because they would never wake up and it'd be in the same spot.
Like, no, I'm leaving that house that
I
night.
know.
Like, they're like, every day, it's like, oh, the spirits push the bed again, and they put it back in place. No, what?
I know. But, like, I literally can't believe that there are families out there that have to go through these things and, like, just accept it.
I'm not accepting it. I will, like, I don't know, I will be homeless before I live in a haunted house.
I mean, I get you can't just move the fuck out or just go stay at a hotel.
Okay, but they had the money to buy a huge farmhouse. Like, I feel like they had the money to, like,
No,
hey, let's get out of here.
I don't think so. I don't think they did. I think they, like, kind of spent it all on that house and then...
Yeah, I guess you're kind of right. Because
But,
it did say at one point they tried, like, getting out of the house, but didn't have enough money to.
yeah. Because, like, the first instinct is to GTFO, but you can't always just go instantly. So they would also see a ghost of a father, son, and dog at the top of the stairs on many different occasions, but they would never acknowledge anyone. They would just stand there, posted up. So that was interesting. But yeah, and then I have, after about 3 years, they began smelling rotten flesh, and then each morning at 5:15 a.m., the kids would be pulled and flung out of bed. Wait, what?
See, that's where I'm like, no way, stop.
I assume that's not every night though. Like just occasionally at 5:15 they'd be pulled and flung out of bed.
Why am I picturing like a small child just laying there in bed and their arm just gets grabbed and he like flies across the room and that's how you're woken up in the morning.
Bruh. I
Oh.
can't.
And y'all, of course this house has a basement too. Because what scary haunted house doesn't have a basement? And they always tried to stay away from this dirt floored cellar. Because of course it also had a dirt floor. But a lot of times their heating equipment would mysteriously fail, causing Roger, which is the dad, to venture down there.
And he would feel a cold, stinking presence behind him.
I have that exact same verbiage in mind. So I feel like we must have got on the same website, but a cold, stinking presence.
It's funny because this came from no website. I was just watching like a BuzzFeed video.
Alright. So over the 10 years that the parent family ended up living in
Oh,
this...
wait. I'm not done with the cellar.
Oh, back to the cellar.
People have found kids' drawings down there. Like crumpled up kids' drawings. Because I think at one point it was like a school home. I don't know. Maybe I made that up. But it would be drawings of a crooked neck lady crumpled up in the depths of the home when paranormal investigators saw a ghost of the bent neck lady lingering around the well outside. Interesting. Okay.
Alright, so over the 10 years that the family lived in the house, the Warrens made multiple trips to go investigate. At one point, Lorraine conducted a seance to attempt to contact the spirits that were possessing the family, And during the seance, Carolyn Perrin apparently became possessed, speaking in tongues and rising from the ground in her chair. I know you had something that conflicted that. Didn't you say she didn't get possessed according to something you read?
Oh yeah. I think Andrea said there was no exorcism, Mom wasn't possessed, just attacked. And the Warrens tried to help, but the president stirred things up more.
I have a quote from Andrea right here about it. It says, she claims to have secretly witnessed the seance. She says, I thought I was going to pass out. My mother began to speak a language not of this world and a voice not of her own. Her chair levitated and she was thrown across the room.
Yeah, and then the parents like basically kicked the Warrens out because they were making it worse. And then, yeah.
So that's kind of like where the difference, I guess, between the movie and the real story happens, is at this point, instead of a seance, they showed the exorcism in the actual movie.
Yeah, it was definitely more of like a seance type of thing. Not like that crazy exorcism you saw.
And Lorraine insists that she and her husband would never attempt an exorcism, and they must be performed by only Catholic priests.
I wonder if the part of the movie is true that like after everything was over, like the Vatican approved the exorcism or something.
Yeah, I wonder that too.
And also how cool that, well, not cool because it's kind of inconvenient as hell, but like you have to get Vatican approval.
Oh, like, yeah, do an exorcism,
That
like
sounds
somebody's
so
dying
official.
over there, and you're like, oh, I gotta get the Vatican to approve this.
Yeah. Okay, so remember when I said that Bathsheba?
I thought that was church bells ringing. Is that an ice cream truck?
That is an ice cream truck. I think that happened in a different episode
It
too.
did.
Why does it come around this
What
time?
if it's not real? What if it's a ghost of an ice cream truck we keep
Oh my
hearing?
God. Oh wait, is this another paranormal story? No. Never mind. I thought I had another one just sent in. Okay, so, alright, back to Bathsheba with the sewing needle. So in 1974, Carolyn was laying on the sofa when she felt a random sharp pain in her calf muscle, and then it began to spasm, and when she looked at her leg, there was a pool of blood, and she began searching in the couch for an explanation and found nothing. But now we know Bathsheba brought a sewing needle to the grave and probably stabbed her, Carolyn, with it. Dude, that ice cream truck is loud. It's so creepy, too. Ew.
I'm not even gonna look out the window because I don't want to look and then not see an ice cream truck. What if there's a clown outside the window?
No, there's definitely one out there. I've seen it. And I've been tempted to go buy it, but like I don't want to be annoyed by my neighbors because they definitely annoy me.
What if your neighbors listen to the podcast?
I highly doubt it, but hey bitches. Okay, so apparently there was a spirit that resented Carolyn and wanted to be the mistress of the house and would attack Carolyn and Robert. And basically I think that was Mrs. Arnold. And I have something on Mrs. Arnold. Where is she? Okay, she hung herself in the barn at age 93. She is the spirit of the bent neck lady. She has no features, just 2 holes for a nose and thin lips with yellow jagged teeth. And one night, her spirit was attacking Carolyn in bed, and she was trying to wake up Robert, and she thought he was dead because like she was literally yanking on him, pulling for dear life, and he was just like not responsive. And then she ripped a blanket off of him, and he had scratch marks on his back, and then the spirit disappeared. The next morning, Andrea went downstairs and saw her mom sketching something that... Oh yeah, because while that was going on in the bedroom, Andrea was like having a dream of the same thing. Like she was watching from a distance or something. Like something weird was going on. And when she went downstairs and saw her mom sketching something, she dropped her coffee cup and said that she saw the same exact thing. And when bad things would happen in the house, the clocks in the house would be stuck at 5:15 again, a.m., yeah. So, also, another little fun fact, before the Warrens showed up, a college student named Keith pulled up to the house randomly one night who had a paranormal investigation team. Literally nobody called them, they just showed up. And so Carolyn was like, yeah, I guess you can come in. We are having problems, so let's see what you can do. And so Keith drew 2 crosses in chalk in the house, and then the windows began like slamming the shutters like violently. And so he is the one that went and told Ed and Lorraine Warren, who were teaching at the university that he was attending, who then showed up at the house the day before Halloween.
So why don't like people like that teach at universities? Like, why can't there be a day in the class and like Ed and Lorraine are coming in to teach today?
Well, first of all, because they're dead.
Well, why isn't there like modern day? Like, why is not Zach Bagans not coming in and teaching?
Because he's got a museum to run. He's got a show to do.
Yeah, I guess so.
That man ain't done investigating yet.
I want to talk to a paranormal investigator. I have so many questions.
Well, one day we probably can, because my friend from work gave me the contact info to one in our area.
We're gonna have to do that soon.
We'll see if my anxiety can handle it. Pray for me.
I kind of have it as like that's kind of where like the events actually ended. Do you have more about it? Because apparently, according to the research I did, it says after the seance, Roger kicked the Warrens out, worried about his wife's mental stability. And according to Andrea, the family continued to live in the house due to financial instability until they were able to move out in 1980, at which point the spirits were silenced and the hauntings ceased.
Yeah, that is the end of the story. But there's like so many other little side pieces, like all the stuff that happened in there that like the movie couldn't quite possibly mention that are coming from the words of the people that experienced it. Like, when they first moved in, April would constantly hear a voice saying, there are 7 dead soldiers buried in the wall.
Yeah, I saw that.
Like, little random stuff like that. And according to Andrea, like, Cindy got the brunt of all of it. She had died when she was 2 years old and revived, and Andrea says that the spirits were like attracted to her because she had been on the other side. So like that's where like there's so much more spiritual stuff to this whole story that Andrea really talks about. If y'all have the TV app Gaia, there's like some really good interviews of Andrea where she just like tells everything that she experienced in the house, so much backstory, and like she even says like she has experiences with UFOs. Maybe we'll get to there in this, I don't know. But yeah, and then one time they saw their mom get brutally beaten with a coat hanger while naked, and like she was literally like badly bruised after. They just saw a coat hanger beating her out of nowhere. And then
What?
and also like they have it in the movie where Roger was like kind of just going with the flow, but like in real life he really wasn't with it. He didn't want to believe any of it, and it really caused tension between him and Carolyn. But in June, after they moved in, Andrea finally began telling her mom what was happening, and they had a meeting where the mom listened to all their stories. Where I just think that's so cute. Like, come on, tell me all of your ghost stories. I believe every word you say.
And then they all went to sleep in that house that night.
Strangely enough. So the mom, over the time, as we said, was slowly aging. She was losing weight. Her voice began to change. She started speaking in archaic English, like just saying things that were so outdated, and immersed herself in the history of the house, like you said. Like she was in this trance. So, let's see what else we got. Oh, interesting. Okay. So, as I was listening to Andrea in her interviews, after all of this, she believes that she doesn't believe that you have a soul and that I have a soul. She believes that there is a soul, which is like the universe that like we all tap into. Which I just thought that was like an interesting thought. Just because I'm just a spiritual, freaky person, I don't know. But it was just like a different perspective I've never really heard, so I wanted to mention it. And so, like I said, the dad was the most scared but never spoke of it. He would internalize it and it turned into anger. And him and Carolyn began arguing a lot. And then Lorraine started witnessing them argue and said, if you're going to do that, do it outside of this house because they are feeding off of that energy.
Can you imagine arguing like with your wife and then like this demonologist like, yeah, I'm gonna do that outside because the demons are feeding off y'all's
Well, also
argument.
imagine when you're arguing inside the house, you just have the cabinets flapping open like
Could you
everything is
imagine?
raging around you.
I'm so glad that did not happen to me.
She also, Andrea says that when she lived in the house from like a young age, so when they moved in, she was 12 years old, and she began feeling very different because she could astral project at a young age and could telepathically communicate from a young age and like felt like she had this old soul. And okay, so we're getting there. She says that she has had encounters with extraterrestrials throughout her life. One of the most crazy occurrences being she was on a Zoom call one day, and then like the computer screen went like staticky, and it was like she was out on a plane somewhere, and at the very, very distance she saw this like being with silver or platinum studs and a cross on its head. And then she like heard little taps, like little drums in the distance or something. And then a male, she said she just like knew for some reason it was a male, lifted his head and there was like panels of lights that she had never seen before rising above or beyond him. And it was like she was looking into a ship, and he had red orb lasering eyes and like looked her dead in the eyes for like 2 minutes straight. He had skin shiny black and smooth, perfect oval face, and it was like he was communicating with her without speaking, but she like could not tell you what she got from that. But she could like feel her like frequency and like vibration change, like she was awoken. Like it was weird. And she also claims to have been aboard ships to other worlds. And all this UFO experience began at the farm.
It is crazy that you never hear about anything like that, like from the actual movie.
I know. Because I don't think she came out with that until like a few years ago, maybe.
So I didn't like really look into it. What did the other sisters say about it? Did you look into that at all?
No. I didn't get that far. It's been a busy school week.
Like I wonder if they all support Andrea's claims or...
I think so, because like in some of the stories that she was telling in these interviews, she lives with one of them, I think. Like she still talks about them like they're all very close. So I would think they support her and go along with what she says.
Yeah.
She's never mentioned anything about there being any like tension. But God, listening to her, like, even after this, now that we've recorded, like, I'm still gonna go back and listen to what else she's got to say, because she seems like she really is an old soul. Like, just listening to her talk and explain everything that she's been through is crazy. But yeah, I'm kind of sad that this is our last spooky episode. Well, until next year.
We'll probably sneak one in somewhere in between.
Yeah, we usually do. What am I saying? Gotta have the spooky stuff.
Do you have any other fun facts about it?
Nope, I think that's everything.
Alright, y'all. Well, that is about all we have for y'all today. Thank y'all again for submitting y'all spooky stories, and even beyond just submitting stories, reach out to us anytime with, I know some of y'all have said y'all have future ideas for topics or you know what I'm trying to say.
Episode ideas, you know.
Yeah, reach out to us. We'd love to hear from y'all.
I will add it to the list.
Alright, y'all. Well, follow us on the socials. You can follow me at Kaylin Ricardo.
And all of mine are Marina Renee.
Alright, y'all stay woke.
Bye!